Acquiring a business? BizNexus simplifies it. Access thousands of updated opportunities in our DIY marketplace or supercharge team sourcing with OmniSource, your all-in-one platform for on-market, off-market, and coming-soon deals. Scale smarter today. Learn more or book a demo at www.biznexus.com.
Disclaimer from the always present legal team. Podcast conversations don't necessarily reflect the views of BizNexus Incorporated. Everything you hear is informational news and updates from around the industry. We're not recommending any investments. We're not offering any investment advice. Be sure to do your own homework.
All right, so today we are going to be diving into this interesting LinkedIn post I found.
Okay.
From a guy named Ben Kelly.
All right.
And he's basically laying out this like 8-step process for buying and scaling businesses while working a 9 to 5.
Interesting.
And kind of the big hook here is that he says you can do it all with minimal upfront cash.
Interesting.
And he says he's already acquired 7 businesses.
7 businesses.
Yeah.
Wow. So he must know what he's doing then.
Supposedly, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm interested to hear more.
Yeah, me too.
What kind of businesses are we talking about?
So he calls himself an off-market deal sourcing fanatic.
Oh,
which I thought was kind of funny. But like, basically that means that he's not just like browsing, business listings.
Right.
He's actively like searching out businesses that aren't publicly for sale.
So like reaching out to business owners directly or something.
Yeah, totally. That's a hustle. It's a different approach.
Yeah, it makes you wonder like what kind of network he has or what kind of resources he's using.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so he specifically mentions 3 businesses that he's acquired.
All right.
One is a SaaS company that's doing like $1.3 million in revenue.
Wow.
$150,000 in cash flow.
That's impressive.
He also acquired a nail salon.
A nail salon?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Bringing in $1.1 million in revenue.
Really? A nail salon doing over $1 million?
Yeah.
That's hard to believe.
It's pretty crazy. And only $30,000 in cash flow, which is kind of interesting, right? Like,
yeah, you think with that much revenue, the cash flow would be a little bit higher?
I know. And then he's got a web design company.
Okay.
That's doing about $256,000 in revenue with $10,000 in cash flow.
Okay, yeah, so kind of more of a smaller...
Yeah, more of a smaller operation.
Smaller operation.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And here's where things get kind of wild.
Okay.
He says he only spends 2 hours a week on the sauce company.
2 hours a week for a $1.3 million business?
I know.
That's pretty amazing if it's true.
Yeah, and 0 effort on the other 2.
How is that even possible?
That's what we're here to figure out.
Okay, I'm very skeptical, but let's hear.
Me too.
Like, how do you run a nail salon with 0 effort?
I don't know.
You've got employees to manage, customers, appointments, inventory.
Yeah, there's always something.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely some red flags there.
Yeah, big red flags.
But let's dive into his 8 steps and see what we can glean from his process.
Okay, yeah, let's see if we can decipher this magic formula.
All right, so step 1, biz buy sell.
Biz buy sell. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's like a website where people list businesses for sale. And he says go on there, but use these specific filters.
Oh, okay. So he's not just browsing randomly.
No, he's got a system.
Okay, I like it.
So minimum of $10,000 a month.
$10,000 a month.
Cash flow.
In cash flow. All right.
Yeah, at least 5 years in operation.
Okay.
And then optionally, you can filter by location.
So he's looking for established, profitable businesses.
Exactly. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Not messing around with startups or anything like that.
Right.
He wants something that's already proven.
Right. Something with a track record.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, step 2, SBA loan.
SBA loan. Okay.
He says you're going to need a business plan.
Yeah.
You're going to need financial documentation from your current job.
Right.
And a personal financial statement.
So they're really scrutinizing your financials.
Yeah, so it's not just like a free-for-all.
Yeah, the SBA loan process can be pretty tough.
Yeah.
I've heard.
Definitely. All right, step 3 is where things get a little interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He says offer an accountant equity in the business.
Equity in the business, huh?
Yeah.
Instead of paying them.
Instead of paying them to audit the financials.
That's an interesting idea.
2.5% to be exact.
2.5%. So you're basically giving up a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
I wonder how accountants feel about that.
Right, like would they rather have the cash or the potential upside?
Yeah, it's a gamble.
Yeah, for both sides.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, step 4, talking to sellers.
Talking to sellers.
He says you really need to understand their motivation for selling.
Okay, why are they getting out of the business?
Exactly.
Important question.
Yeah, and he says that he prefers buying from retiring baby boomers.
Retiring baby boomers. Interesting.
Yeah, because he figures their businesses are generally well-run.
Yeah.
And they're not selling because there's something inherently wrong with it.
Yeah, like they're not trying to get rid of a sinking ship or something.
Right.
Right.
That makes sense.
But I mean, you still have to do your due diligence.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, just because they're nice grandma doesn't mean everything's perfect.
Exactly. You got to look under the hood.
Yeah.
No matter who you're buying from.
Definitely.
Yeah, good point. Okay, step 5, he brings in the idea of a private investor
Private investor.
to cover the down payment.
To cover the down payment. Okay, so where do you find these private investors?
Yeah, and what's in it for them?
Right, like what are they getting out of this?
Exactly. And how do you even pitch that, right? Like,
Yeah, you've got to have a really compelling pitch
yeah,
to convince someone to invest in a business they're not going to be running.
exactly.
Hmm.
All right, step 6.
Step 6? Okay.
He talks about focusing on seller discretionary earnings, or SDE.
Seller discretionary earnings? Okay,
Yeah.
what is that exactly?
It's basically like a measure of the business's cash flow,
Okay.
adjusted for the owner's salary and benefits.
All right, so it's kind of like how much profit the business is generating.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And he says make an offer based on 2.3 times the SDE.
2.3 times the SDE, is that a standard multiple?
Hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, it probably depends on the industry.
Yeah, I think it depends on a lot of factors.
The growth potential, the market conditions, all that stuff.
Right, so there's probably no magic formula.
Yeah, valuing a business is more of an art than a science.
Yeah, definitely.
Gotcha.
All right, step 7 is where the SBA loan and the private investor come together.
Okay, so this is where it all starts to connect.
Yeah, so he's suggesting using the SBA 7A program.
It's a 7A program.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which allows a private investor to cover the 10% down payment
10% down payment.
in exchange for a 15% equity stake.
15% equity stake. So they're getting a pretty good chunk of the business.
Yeah, but I guess it helps minimize your upfront costs.
Yeah, that's true. But you're essentially trading ownership for cash.
Right, it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
And, you got to think about what it means to have this private investor involved.
Yeah, like how much say are they going to have in the business decisions?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, finally, step 8, closing the deal and implementing changes to run the business passively.
Passively. All right, let's talk about that.
Yeah, he suggests this employee bonus schemes.
Okay.
Hiring a general manager
Mm-hmm.
and building systems to streamline operations.
So trying to make it as hands-off as possible.
Right.
Okay. I mean, those are all good strategies.
Yeah.
But true passive ownership? I don't know.
Yeah, it seems a little too good to be true,
Yeah, like you're still going to need to be involved.
especially in the beginning, right?
Yeah, definitely in the
Got to
beginning.
get things set up and running smoothly.
Absolutely.
So it's not like you just buy the business and then go to the beach.
Yeah, no, you're going to be
You
working.
got to put in the work.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here in this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we've gone through all 8 steps.
Yeah. Unpacking Ben Kelly's 8 steps for buying and scaling existing businesses.
And we've definitely identified some potential red flags.
Oh, yeah.
The things that need further investigation.
For sure.
This whole passive ownership thing.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And what about the hidden costs?
Yeah, good point.
The risks involved?
Yeah, good point. We'll need to dig into that a little bit more.
We will.
Yeah, and how about due diligence?
Due diligence is crucial.
Can't skip that step.
No, not at all.
All right, so stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive,
I'm ready for part 2.
where we'll continue to explore the potential and pitfalls of Ben Kelly's approach.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's pick up with this Ben Kelly's 8-step process.
Okay.
We've identified a couple potential red flags, but I really think we need to talk about this no money down thing.
Okay, yeah, what's the catch?
Well, there's always a catch, right? And in this case, it's the risk.
Okay, so what kind of risks are we talking about?
Well, remember those SBA loans?
Yeah.
They typically require a personal guarantee.
Oh, right.
So if the business goes under, you're personally liable for the debt.
So you could lose more than just your initial investment.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So even though he's saying no money down,
Right.
you're still putting your own skin in the game.
In a big way.
Yeah. Okay. And even if you get a private investor to cover that down payment, you're still giving up equity.
Right. So you're trading ownership for that upfront cash.
Exactly.
Okay. So it's not really no money down. It's just.
It's no money down with strings attached.
Right. Yes. There's always a trade-off.
Always.
Right. And what about due diligence? If you kind of gloss over that part.
Yeah. Due diligence is crucial.
Like how much should people be doing? What should they be looking for?
I think it's tempting to get caught up in the excitement of like buying a business.
Right.
But you really need to be thorough and objective.
Okay. So what are some things that people should be looking for?
Inconsistencies in the financials, declining revenue trends, high customer churn rates.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Outdated technology.
Okay.
Lack of clear systems and processes.
So basically any signs that the business might not be as healthy or profitable as it seems.
Exactly. You're looking for those red flags,
Uh-huh.
those subtle hints that something might be amiss.
So it's like detective work.
It is.
Yeah.
It's piecing together the puzzle to get a complete picture of the business's health.
Right. And it seems like his LinkedIn post doesn't really talk about that part.
No, I mean, he's promoting his coaching services,
Right.
so he wants to paint a rosy picture.
Yeah, it's all sunshine and roses.
Right.
Okay, so buyer beware.
Exactly.
Do your own research. Talk to other business owners.
Yeah, get a balanced perspective.
Definitely.
Don't just rely on one person's story.
Okay, and let's talk about market realities for a second.
Right, because even if a business is doing well today,
Yeah.
there's no guarantee it'll stay that way.
That's true.
Economic conditions can change.
Right.
New competitors can emerge. Customer preferences can shift overnight.
So you're saying you can't just look at the past performance of a business.
Right. You need to be thinking about the future
Right.
and how adaptable that business is to change.
Makes sense. So you need to understand the industry, the competitive landscape,
Yeah.
the broader economic environment.
All of it.
Wow. Okay, and I remember seeing some comments on his post
Oh, yeah.
where people were expressing some skepticism about his claims.
Yeah, I saw those too.
Like about the no-effort businesses,
Right.
the ease of getting SBA loans,
Yeah.
the overall simplicity of his approach.
Yeah, and I think those comments are valuable.
Yeah.
Because they offer different perspectives.
Right. It's important to remember that his post is essentially a marketing tool.
It is.
He's trying to promote his coaching.
Yeah,
So take it with a grain of salt.
absolutely.
Do your research.
Yeah.
Don't just rely on one person's rosy picture.
Exactly.
Okay, and let's circle back to this idea of passive ownership.
Yeah, because if it were that easy to just buy a business and let it run on autopilot,
Right.
wouldn't everyone be doing?
Exactly. So how realistic is it really? How much time and effort should people expect to invest?
Well, it depends on the business.
Right.
But you'll probably need to be involved in setting the strategic direction,
Right.
making key decisions,
Right.
monitoring the financials,
Right.
resolving major issues,
Right.
building relationships with key stakeholders.
So it's not just about hiring a general manager and calling it a day.
No, you can't just check out completely.
You need to be an active participant,
At least initially.
especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's about building a business that can eventually run without you,
Right.
but it still requires work and effort.
Especially up front.
Yeah, okay.
It's a process.
All right, so we've talked about the risks,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of due diligence,
Yeah.
the reality of passive ownership.
Right.
What else do we need to consider?
Well, we still need to talk about the potential downsides.
Okay.
Some ethical considerations, and ultimately help you decide if this is the right approach for you.
Okay, sounds like we have a lot more to unpack.
We do.
Let's dive into the final part of our deep dive and see where this journey takes us.
Let's do it.
Okay, so welcome back to our deep dive into Ben Kelly's 8-step process.
Right.
We've talked about a lot of stuff, the risks, the due diligence,
Yeah.
the whole passive ownership thing.
Right.
But I think there are a few more things that we need to kind of unpack here.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to talk about the potential downsides.
Okay, yeah, what are some of the downsides?
Well, one major downside is the debt.
Okay,
You know, you could end up taking on a significant amount of debt.
right, from the SBA loans on the private investors.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you're leveraging your future earnings
You are.
to acquire these businesses.
And if those earnings don't materialize,
Yeah.
that debt can become a real burden.
Right, so it's not just about the upfront costs, it's about the ongoing financial commitments.
It is.
Yeah.
And we also need to talk about the time commitment.
Okay, yeah, because even if you're aiming for passive ownership,
Right.
it still takes time and energy to acquire and scale a business.
It does, especially in those initial stages.
Right, you might need to dedicate evenings, weekends,
Yeah.
even vacation time
Absolutely.
to get things running smoothly.
It's not a hands-off, set it and forget it kind of thing.
Definitely not.
No, it's definitely not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Right.
It requires hard work, dedication, and a willingness to really roll up your sleeves and get involved.
Yeah, so you got to be prepared to put in the work.
You do.
But what about the payoff? Like, is it worth it?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? And the answer really depends on you.
Okay.
You know, your individual goals, your risk tolerance, your entrepreneurial drive.
Right, so if you're someone who likes to build businesses from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
this might not be the right approach.
Yeah, it might feel less creative, less innovative.
Right, you're stepping into someone else's vision.
Exactly.
But for someone with a stable job, a lower risk tolerance.
Right.
Who wants more passive income streams?
This could be a great fit.
Yeah, okay.
It allows you to tap into an existing infrastructure, customer base, revenue streams.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution?
It's not.
It's about finding the right path for you.
It is.
All right, so what are some key takeaways from this whole deep dive into Ben Kelly's approach?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that buying and scaling businesses while working a 9-to-5.
Yeah.
It's a legitimate path.
Okay.
But it's not a magic formula
Right.
for instant wealth or effortless success.
You got to put in the work.
You do. There are risks, there are challenges, and there's a significant commitment involved.
Okay, and due diligence.
Due diligence is crucial.
You can't skip that step.
You can't. You got to do your research, analyze the financials, understand the market.
Talk to other business owners.
Yeah, talk to people who've been there, done that.
And be honest with yourself about your goals, your risk tolerance,
Absolutely.
the level of involvement you're willing to commit to.
Yeah, because this approach,
Yeah.
it might be a great fit for some people,
Right.
but it's not the right path for everyone.
So Ben Kelly's 8-step process can be a valuable framework,
It can.
but it's up to each individual to decide if it's right for them.
It is.
All right, so as always, keep diving deeper, explore your options, weigh the pros and cons, and create your own path to success.
Yeah, and if you're considering this approach,
Yeah.
just remember to approach it with a healthy dose of skepticism,
Okay.
a thirst for knowledge, and a willingness to put in the work.
Great advice. And remember, the journey of entrepreneurship is as much about the learning process as it is about the destination.
Well said.
So embrace the challenges, learn from your experiences, and never stop exploring new possibilities.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thinking of exiting your business or taking on a private equity partner to help you grow faster? BizNexus has you covered. Tap into our network of thousands of best-fit investors, acquirers, and proven M&A advisors, and we'll help you begin the relationship confidentially on your terms, your timeline. Learn more at biznexus.com.